Hello class, today I'm going to be training you in pesticide safety. And so what my qualifications are is I have been trained as a trainer from the Department of Agriculture. I have a valid card which allows me to train folks both as students and people in the agricultural industry to be handlers and ag workers. Once you finish the requirements that I have for you, you will become a handler, ag worker, utilizing a card supplied by me. This is all through the Department of Agriculture, and you guys can also become trainers if you're in an ag industry that would benefit from you being a trainer. I can give you more information about that Department of Agriculture Train the Trainer program. So let's continue. The sessions that I'm going to go over with you are shown here on the screen. I will be covering each one of these with you. Once these have been covered, you will become trained and you will become certified. And so between this presentation and the videos and the things we've gone over in class and completing the test will allow you to become certified. So the first thing is the definition of a pesticide. So a pest is a nuisance, an annoying person or thing, an injurious animal or plant. And side is the act of killing or to kill. So when you put those two together, that's what you're looking at with pesticides. So with a backdrop to our beautiful greenhouse growing tomatoes, we often have to think about things like insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and rodenticides. So any substance that is intended to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate any pest, or is intended to be used as a plant growth regulator, a defoliant, or a desiccant, falls under this classification of pesticide. And so as far as plant growth regulators go, we often, while growing ornamental plants, will want to reduce height, and so we'll use plant growth regulators. Defoliants, like in the cotton industry, before the plants are growing actively but they want to harvest the cotton, they put a defoliant on that kills the foliage but leaves the cotton alone so they can come through and take care of it. A desiccant is anything that dries down typically plant material. So pesticides can be found in the forms of liquid, sprays, powders, granules, or gases. And I do want to distinguish, there's a lot of talk between organic or non-organic. This is independent of whether you're going organic or non-organic. If pesticides are utilized, they come under the following pesticide forms. So where can you find pesticides? So pesticides can remain on the plants, the soil, irrigation water, irrigation equipment, the storage facilities, the application equipment, or on your clothing after application. So these are all reasons you want to be careful regardless of the level of toxicity of that pesticide. So if you have pesticide poisoning symptoms you need to be aware of, and typically you need to look for these symptoms in other people. So acute symptoms are observed immediately up to 24 hours of exposure. They would be rash, headache, or eye irritation. Chronic symptoms could be they're delayed, their exposure over a long period of time. So these are a little less known, but they can cause cancer, sterility, and birth defects. And so these happen a little bit over a long period of time. This is interesting because routes that pesticides get into your body, we have some images here showing people in their PPE. PPE is known as personal protective equipment. And so the folks pictured have different levels of protective clothing. PPE must be washed and dried after each day's use and stored away from chemicals. Changing gloves and respirators as manufacturer specifications. The scariest thing when I look here at this human body, look at where the pesticides are being absorbed. And when they test people that have been exposed to or are utilizing the spray for pesticides, these are some scary areas where pesticides are entering folks, so protect yourself. Okay, another thing in our area, it can be quite hot from time to time. Working in greenhouses, it can be warm year-round, but working outside, heat is definitely an issue, and so we need to know the difference between heat exhaustion and poisoning through pesticides. And so you see some of these are the same: sweating, headache, fatigue, nausea. However, a big distinguishing factor is, are there moist membranes? So salivating, tears, spit, that is related to poisoning through pesticides. Dry mouth, no tears, no spit present would be more related to heat exhaustion. If you go down through this list, fast versus slow pulse, dilated, which are large pupils, or small or pinpoint pupils, and then loss of coordination, confusion, fainting, or coma. And so the main key differences are right in this area. You need to know these and be prepared to act accordingly. So heat exhaustion. We went over these in the previous slide. And to prevent heat exhaustion, you need to stop your activities and rest, drink cool, non-alcoholic beverages, take a cool shower or bath if available to you, or just running a hose over the top of someone that you feel is having heat exhaustion. Move to an air-conditioned area, remove extra clothing, and then coming to work rested and hydrated in the first place is a great way to avoid heat exhaustion. Also, if you are in charge of your own work hours, or you can work at times when heat exhaustion is not going to be as prevalent, so avoiding the middle of the day. Those are an added thing that's important. Okay, pesticide poisoning continued. So was our theoretical victim suffering from poisoning or from heat exhaustion? So if there's any doubt about what the illness is, get medical help immediately. Both pesticide poisoning and heat stroke can be life-threatening. Both also require prompt treatment. You can have spills on the skin. This is a non-acute spill. The faster the poison is washed off the patient, the less injury will result. And so washing off with a hose, shower, faucet. At both of our facilities for horticulture, we have wash stations or wash bottles, and we also have hoses available. Okay, chemical burns on the skin. Remove contaminated clothing, wash with large quantities of running water, cover loosely with a clean, soft cloth, and avoid use of ointments, greases, powder, and other drugs in first aid treatment. Get to the hospital. Okay, pesticides in the eyes. It is most important to wash the eye out as quickly but as gently as possible. That's why we have students always wearing eye protection when they're working around chemicals or mixing fertilizers. You have to continue washing for 15 minutes or more and get to the hospital. Okay, inhaled poisons, dust, vapors, gases. If the victim is in an enclosed space, do not go in after them without an air-supplied respirator. Carry the patient to fresh air. Open all doors and windows. Loosen all tight clothing. Perform CPR if breathing has stopped. Keep patient as calm as possible, and watch if the patient is convulsing, watch their breathing and protect them from falling and striking their head. You have to step up and make certain that you are there to protect your coworkers, your fellow students, or people that may even work for you. Call 911, get them to the hospital. You wrap the patient in a blanket too, but you do not want to overheat. Okay, if poisons are swallowed, do not induce vomiting. This has changed. Do not induce vomiting. The label will advise you, and we'll understand how important the label is coming up. The first aid statement or statement of practical treatment, whether a person who has swallowed pesticides should be made to vomit, but in not inducing vomiting is important now. Call 911, get somebody to the hospital, and knowing where the hospital is. That's important. Okay, we have a poison control center number, and this they can give more information about the pesticide and the label, and they have information on hand. So if you give the trade name or the product, they can help tell you what to do. This is important. Never take pesticides home. You have to keep pesticides in their original containers. And non-pesticide containers like drink bottles, etc., are not safe to keep them in. I use the example of a Gatorade bottle, which is handy for people working in the ag industry. Maybe they just finished the Gatorade. They're going to move some pesticides from field to field or from another facility, put it into that bottle. The person knows, but the people in the area or others might not know, and a confusing thing may occur, may happen. And worst case, you take it home, it's in the truck, or it's somewhere where a child sees it and drinks it. That's the reason, a big reason why we need to be super careful with pesticides. Even when you come home from work, if you're doing some sort of application or spraying, you got to keep your work clothes separate and wash separately, and then wash thoroughly. Okay, cover yourself. Jeans, coveralls, long sleeve shirts, closed shoes with socks, hats, gloves. Read the label of the pesticide carefully and follow the directions regarding additional protective gear. You need to have towels, paper towels, soap, and water. It is legally required that these be within 1/4 of a mile. In some ag industries where huge fields are involved, they have stations every 1/4 mile, or the stations move with the workers when they're in the fields. In our case here at Yavapai College, we have all of these things within our facilities. Okay, here is some of the protective clothing should be used by an applicator. Long pants, long sleeves, a snug collar, a hat, a shirt tucked in, chemical resistant gloves, boots or boot covers if required by the label. We do have coveralls that can be utilized, and that's usually what I put on when I am doing an application. What you have to display at the application site is the location and description of the area to be treated, the product name, the EPA registration number, the active ingredients, time and date of application, and then the REI, which is the restricted entry interval. That's the amount of time that you are not allowed to go in there without wearing PPE. And then oral warnings are okay to verbally tell people, but posted is important because oral warnings only reach the people who hear them. As you can imagine, somebody may enter the job site for other reasons that did not receive the oral warning. So emergency information, name, telephone number, and address of nearest emergency medical facility. This is the pesticide safety poster. These are provided and are hung at each site. If you are an ag worker in the industry or become one, you need to make sure that the poster is there so people can follow directions, and it can be foremost in their minds about how to protect yourself from pesticides. Okay, here is an example of how warning signs are posted. Here is a field of tomatoes. This says in both English and Spanish to keep out, and information would be posted in a central location about what was applied. That way, if somebody random came up and said, hey, I have a tomato field, I'm going to pick some tomatoes, they know that something has been applied here and not to enter. And so that would apply to other workers. As you can imagine, there's lots of people that may enter a field like this that were not the people who actually did the spraying. Okay, you want to avoid area during application. And so pesticides can be applied through irrigation, can be applied through small backpack sprayers or handheld sprayers. We often sometimes use small little spray bottles when we're using neem oil or some organic based oils. Here it is an example of a crop duster plane putting down some sort of application over a large area, and I once saw a plane doing applications where the person in the plane was wearing full protective equipment while flying the plane. There were flaggers standing in the field marking where they were spraying, and the flaggers were not wearing any protective equipment. So the plane applying the pesticides and flying over, the pilot is completely in protective clothing, but not the flaggers on the ground. So be smart and look for things like that, and don't get involved with this kind of operation. If someone around you is making a mistake, let them know and get out of there. Okay, it's the law. You can't be forced to work in dangerous conditions. Okay, so a lot of times employers make mistakes too. You as a worker, as a certified worker, know what the rules are and the laws are, and you might have to share those from time to time. You are protected from retaliatory acts, legally protected. Okay, if you see violations or there are major violations, the Department of Agriculture has a hotline to get people that need to come under compliance. Here's the label. Here is a product called Zappo. It's an insect spray, and if you go through these 1 through 11, you'll see warning or the caution statement. You'll see number 2, the directions for use. You have the re-entry statement, and a lot of times with the re-entry, there's also a pre-harvest interval, which is, so re-entry is the REI, the PHI is the pre-harvest interval. So if something is sprayed and there's a period of time before you can consume or harvest that product, that's part of the PHI. Okay, registration and establishment numbers. Okay, number 5 is the type of formulation, because Zappo may come in different formulations, different strengths. A misuse statement, a lot of times it says keep it away from aquatic areas and schools, and common sense, and a lot of this is common sense, but we need to know, sometimes the common sense gets confusing. Number 7, child hazard warning. Number 8, the ingredient statement. These are the active and inert ingredients. Name of the product. Number 10 is name and address of the manufacturer. And number 11 is the net contents, how much it is. All of these things have to be on every labeled pesticide. Okay, the label is the law. Everyone who handles pesticides is responsible for understanding and following the label instructions. If somebody else is hurt or harmed because of your actions, the law will make certain that those people are held accountable. So I cannot say to students, go take product Zappo and apply 2 ounces per 1,000 square feet, or put it in a backpack sprayer and go spray it because it kills bugs or it kills weeds. Or you have to read the label. I might be your instructor and you may trust me, but your responsibility is reading that, because if there's a misunderstanding or something's lost in translation, the ownership falls on you to read the label. Okay, there are recommended times when you should read it. When you buy it, when you prepare it, before applying it, before you store it or dispose of it. We have lots of organic and non-organic treatments that we would do in a normal course of a horticulture facility's year. And so you want to make sure that you are aware of the different products you're using and don't get confused about different application rates and different use statements. Okay, there are signal words as far as how toxic a product is. So danger, warning, caution, and caution or none. So that's about the lethal dosage that can affect the products that you're using, and how that then is toxic to humans. So know the REI and worker protection standards. Personal protective equipment listed and PPE. Restricted entry interval. If it's not listed, always utilize 4 hours. Okay, here is some protective equipment. And there are lots of personal protective equipment stores where you can order this kinds of stuff online to become an applicator and a handler. Okay, here is safe pesticide handling. My interpretation of this is because he has this type of mask on, he or she, and this type of suit on with this shield. This is a very toxic product that's going in a very concentrated form into a large mixing tank. And so this clearly requires very safe pesticide handling skills and a knowledge of what this product is. You need to know how to mix, load, apply, store, dispose, and transport. All of those things are on the label. The hint is it's on the label. What to wear, how, where, when to mix, how and when to apply, restrictions, how to store it, transport it, and dispose of it. When handling equipment used for mixing, loading, and applying, and cleaning, the PPE requirements apply. Okay, pesticides sometimes spills. You have to clear the area, you have to keep your people and animals away, You have to wear PPE. You have to contain the soil, sand, sawdust, or absorbent clay to contain the product. You clean it up, you place it in a container and label it hazardous waste. There's information here about the Chemical Transportation Emergency Center and a number to call. Okay, this environment, it's very circular. And so the way that a pesticide can move through the environment is very important, because water, both from atmospheric to soil base to leaching to groundwater to back into the atmosphere or back pumped up to use through irrigation again, is all part of the natural cycle, and we want to keep pesticides out of this cycle. Okay, it's the law. It's a violation of federal and state law to dispense pesticides in a manner that is not consistent with the label. No employer can legally require you to dispense pesticides in a manner that will cause harm or contact with other persons or workers, and your employer must provide proper PPE. So I just pulled this picture out of a magazine, and here you have someone spraying probably an organic product in an organic garden. Here is the product, Piola insect spray. The person is wearing rubber gloves and rubber boots, but is completely exposed in other places. And so even her eyes are not protected. So some of the basic things, and obviously this photo was probably staged to look so nice in this area, but you see people doing this kind of thing a lot. And this is just an example, and this is from a well-known gardening magazine, to think about how these work and how to protect yourself. If this person was to easily pump too hard and the sprayer broke off, it could shoot up in the face, it could spray onto someone else, and the exposure, the potential for drift onto her legs is extensive in this case. Okay, so now I'm giving a congratulations. If you've completed all the other requirements that I had for you, you are going to get your ag worker and handler cards. All right, thank you guys.